Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Kubeflow community meeting for the 16th and 17th. This actually is wrong. 16th and 17th of November 2021. We've got quite a few items, but we'll try and either push things to future meetings that aren't super important or just blast through them. So the overview, one of the first things I want to talk about is we actually have a proposal workflow that we've kind of not been following that's, I think, been causing us some pain. We'll come to that. And then we're talking about the archiving process for a lot of repos that are not used anymore. We've got lots of PRs on the website. We'll cover those. And we've got some proposals from Ericto about user group contributors, which I'm not entirely clear about. But yep, that's cool. And proposal for, putting some kind of process for documenting the slides of each of the Kubeflow releases. I think this is also Ericto, this one here, which is adding release docs to the Kubeflow community repo. And then we've got some kind of update from this Peritus integration with Kubeflow's Slack, which I think is about like triaging issues based off from the Slack messages. I've got some things for future meetings down here, but we won't cover those today because the meeting list is too long already. Okay, so the first thing I wanted to just highlight to everyone, and I think I want to just have a small discussion about it, is I think we've been experiencing problems where we've had PRs that have been open for months, if not longer, in the proposals. So on the Kubeflow community repo, which is where we manage our community to some extent, we have proposals that often come in, and I think a lot of them, it's very unclear how we can get them merged and actually ratified, if you want to call them that. And there is actually on that repo something that the community agreed to, which is how to actually submit and approve a proposal. But I think it's a little bit out of date in one section, which is that the scope of who has approver and who has the voting is probably needs to be adjusted. But I think that's the thing I want to focus the discussion on, which is that I really want to see proposals have an actual process to get merged. So I want to hear people discuss that. Has anyone got any ideas about proposals? And if you haven't, then who should actually get the right to do this voting? Because it says here, Kubeflow project approvers. That's really unclear. Who is a project approver? And then if we can get this going, I think we can have a really healthy kind of anything that needs to happen can go through this process, I think. And yeah, so does anyone want to comment on that, or should I raise an issue or something to say, let's start following this? Has anyone seen this document before? I'm sure some people have. Well, anyway, I just think this is a really good document. It was written a long time ago, but it was, well, not that long ago, a year ago. But I think it's a good idea, and I just think I really want to draw it to the attention so that things like there's a bunch of proposals recently, like the certification program would have been a lot easier if we had a clear path of who gets to vote and who can veto and who can't. And I think it would have saved a lot of time. So hopefully, I'm really not sure what to say, really, because we just need to follow it. Anyway, if no one wants to comment, we'll move on. No one?
I read it. I thought it made sense. I think you've brought up the points. I think people need to be aware that it's there, and we should discuss it and then make a decision. Are we going to use it? And if we're going to use it, we're going to need approvers, to your point.
Yeah, so what I think the implication of this was that it was anyone who was an approver on any project, but I think that's a bit vague nowadays because there's so many people now. So I think probably it would make sense to be related to the working groups, but I don't know how. I think something should be related to that. But I think that's probably the only thing we need to propose, ironically, is how to define who gets veto power, and also binding approver power, obviously, in this case, +1 votes. It would also make sense that probably each release should also go through this process and have every other, like for example, the Apache Foundation uses this kind of binding release vote process where things don't get released unless a certain number of binding votes happen. But anyway, okay, no one wants to comment on that before we move on. I'll give you a second.
I mean, I would love to see that, like in general, overall, as you said, like across the working groups, if there is a standardization in terms of how decisions are made, right? That probably will be a good thing to implement. The thing is, like you probably need to go and first for the decision, you still need all the working groups to say, okay, we will all abide by this same thing, and so, yeah, it's like everyone has to approve and say, yes, this is what we will follow and this is what we will do. I think in general, the way things are getting done is obviously like who enough number of votes like within a working group. So the working groups are, you know, more often than not operating independently, right? But some projects are not at all even bothered about some of those things, right? So yeah, I don't know how do you enforce something like this unless and until like everyone together, all the working group says yes, we will do exactly and use the same proposal document, right?
Well, I'm not saying for within the proposal, for if it's within the working groups. This is, in my mind, for the community. So things like establishing governance, deciding to rename the project, for example. You wouldn't. I'm not proposing that, but I'm just saying like something to that extent. It wouldn't be like is there a button added to Katib in this place? You know what I mean? That's obviously for their own proposals. I'm talking. This is about community structure and governance and things that affect everything, right? And if you're part of Kubeflow, you have to abide by these things just by the nature of being part of Kubeflow. That's kind of my mind.
I mean, that's mostly for James to comment, right? I mean, what's the point in the end? Like some of the larger renaming anything like that's all still heavily in Google's purview, right? I don't think any of us, uh,
Well,
yeah.
I'm not sure because like it does seem to imply that anyone can propose things, and if enough people agree, then it's binding, right? So I don't know.
So,
This it seems like a good approach for an open source project to have this as the proposal framework, and it's been there for a year. So
so it's written in 2018. So I think February 2018. So seems like a lot has changed. I was not in the Kubeflow org in 2018, but it seems like a lot has changed after that.
yeah,
Right.
I just think this is a good proposal anyway. Like if not anything else, we just need to define this piece here. This is the only part which prevents this working right now.
I think there's certain proposals that are related to, I think, basically anything related to trademark issues, right? I think it still kind of needs to be managed by, at least ultimately approved by Google. What are some of the other like examples of like recent proposals that are, I guess, not getting?
Well, we don't really get to make. No one even bothers trying to make them. I think that's the bigger issue because they don't believe there's a pathway to get them approved.
But like Matthew, and I think you're on the right point. The question is like, why go down a path which for the last 1.5 years, right? I mean, it's very clear these are decisions which Google will make, and there is no. I mean, you're going to waste your efforts and time and energy. And I think if people are not aware, it more make them more aware versus, yeah, I don't know. I mean, this is one of those things which probably is not worth banging your head against. There are better things to do versus, yeah.
Well, I mean, if we're gonna not follow it, we should delete it from the repo, right? I really want this repo to be up to date for what the community is, right? It's pointless to have things that we're not going to follow. But I think this is something that we should strive to follow because I think it's a good approach. But anyway, that's kind of the idea. I'm not sure what the next steps are here, but I think probably it's if you have a proposal. Well, it's not that. It's we really need to just define. We need to decide: are we going to follow this? And if not, get rid of it. And if we are, then clearly define what a project approver is, because I think that's the only thing missing.
So I'm looking at like, for example, currently there's an outstanding proposal, add elastic proposal, right? And I see a bunch of comments here, but is this something that like Google needs to weigh in on, or is it something more kind of can be driven by, I guess, just looking at the comments here, Is it the training group that's mostly commenting on the proposal?
I'm more than comfortable specifying that Google gets a veto power. That's fine. In fact, everyone has a veto power here. That's what it says. Like, it's just we need to have a community-driven approach for proposals, because obviously Google doesn't want to be involved in every weird little thing that we do, like, unless it is actually important. But obviously they get a veto power just as much as any other stakeholder does, and I think that's where we need to define what a project approver is. Like, and Google obviously will be one of them, or some people at Google representing Google. So yeah, that's kind of the idea. And I think people will feel more comfortable joining the community if there's something like this exists. Just like, you know, Apache Foundation has these improvement proposals, Kubernetes has them. You know, we just don't have a process right now. Anyway, okay, cool. I'm gonna move on here, but I think the next steps are figure out if we're going to adopt this as the proposal structure again, and if we are, clearly define who has the power of voting. Obviously not undermining any of the legal structures that already exist. Cool. So the archiving repos, James, do you want to comment on this? I think, was it James that messaged everyone? Yeah, I think it was.
Yes, so this is James Liu. I would like to kind of like give an announcement that, yeah, thank you so much for opening this page, that we are going to take an action to archive the list of repositories that are not maintained, and also delete those repositories, those are obviously not going to be, not contain any helpful information. Because some of them are being mirrored from some popular tool, and then some of them is just a few file that doesn't have any code. So I would like to ask for the community to help deliver this message to your friend, your teammate, or anyone you know who might be using these repos. And then if they say, oh, I have a concern, or I want to revert the decision of archiving or deleting some repository, feel free to comment in the box or reply to this email, so we can discuss further. Otherwise, I plan to take the action by the end of this month.
Thank you,
That's
James.
all. Yeah, thank you.
Anyone got any immediate comments, or we're just going to move on here? I think people can just reply in this thread if you have a comment. Actually, let's just move on. Cool.
Last week, we then mentioned to archive the example repository. The example repository, I took a look over there. There are actually a lot of examples, and then they belong to different owners. So I think we done is creating a spreadsheet to follow up with all those owners to see whether they want to move the example or archive them, or they still actively maintain them. My idea is like it's very good to follow up and then make sure the example repository is up to date. But I think it would be great to still have the repository. So
yeah,
if we say,
in
oh,
fact,
if
it's now
this
on the website. If we go here, it is
Yeah.
actually here. If the problem is we are linking to it here, which is why people have discovered it recently under getting
Yes,
started examples.
Yeah, I think we should also update this page so we are not confusing people
Definitely.
at this moment. And then once we think the example repository is clean up and up to date, then we can add this link again back to this page so people can find the useful information here.
It's probably a bit dangerous to remove the page because knowing us, we'll never re-add it. But given the speed at which the website moves, but
maybe we can just comment the part that
yeah,
refer
maybe
to
comment above
for
it.
example. Yeah,
Maybe
so
we should just say it's out of date or something.
Yeah, so putting up some banner is helpful as well.
It's probably a good idea. Does anyone want to take that action, or should I just put that on the list?
I can do that. Yeah.
I'll put it down here so we remember. Put warning. That the examples are out of date. Okay, cool. Awesome. Okay, let's move on to the next one. Okay, so there's a bunch of PRs on the website, most of which were created by me, but I'm just kind of trying to pull the website into order. That's why. Anyone else can do it as well. So the main one that I'm trying to get through so that it kind of reduces some significant confusion points in the community is this one here, which is that I don't know why that's not linking. There we go. So this one obviously has been a source of a lot of discussion, which is the creating a new guide section and moving some of the non-distributions that are listed under distributions into them. There's been many points of contention, one of which is what is a distribution? Another one is the names of these pages. Some people have different opinions on that. I just want to understand, obviously Jan, you made a comment here. Do you want to make some comments here? Because I'd love to see this merged as soon as possible, obviously.
Matthew, one comment I have is like, I mean, obviously, the reason there are so many discussions is because, you know, people, and you keep on coming back to it and keep on, you know, for enforcing certain things which I think are non-organic in a sense, like, you know, they're not making sense. Like, hey, deploy manifest on something. What does that even heck mean? I mean, the point here is like, why? I mean, in a sense, like you say, there is point of confusion. Like, who are the people who are creating this point of confusion? And B, like I was just looking at Knative website, right? I mean, Knative is just deploy this thing, you know, kubectl apply. There is no cloud, there is no distribution. Why are you so much concerned about, you know, the distributions, non-distributions? I mean, in the end, and if to the point, like creating very ambiguous thing, deploy manifest on this cloud. What does, I mean, I'm just, you know, getting a bit your obsession with this topic. It has been there for 6 months, and you probably have created more into this or added more to this confusion versus, you know, clarifying it. Maybe best thing is just remove everything and just say kubectl apply on Kubernetes and no endorsement or no mention of any cloud here. Just, you know, figure it out on your own. That maybe is one way, or otherwise just it is deploy Kubeflow on this cloud, deploy Kubeflow on that cloud. Why the heck are we concerned whether it's a distribution, whether it's supported or not, and you know, trying to classify these things?
The reasons that I've stated are very clear. Is that so? And I've kind of made my final points here really, which is the main reasons that I'm suggesting we distinguish guides from distributions are that in the near future, distributions will have to be certified under the new conformance program, and it doesn't make any sense to certify our own manifests. What does that even mean? The next point is that in the near future, we'll be removing all distribution documentation from the website because that's just, it's weird that it's currently there for external, that we're hosting external vendors documentation. But obviously, if it's a guide for Kubeflow manifests, it's not an external vendor, it is our repo. So it doesn't really make sense to remove them there. So in the interest of keeping the documentation on the website for these kubectl apply things, it makes sense to distinguish them so that they don't get culled when the rest of the distributions go. But the second point, and I think the biggest one, is that the community did agree on what a distribution was, and I remember this discussion very vigorously. And it is in this proposal here that was discussed violently almost, which is defining what a distribution is. And I think I laid it out here, which is that we define as a community that a distribution is an opinionated bundle of Kubeflow applications optimized for a particular use case or environment. Other requirements were, if we look at this, you can read them here, but I've summarized them in this, which is that distributions should be developed outside the Kubeflow org, and distributions of Kubeflow are encouraged to pick unique names that avoid creating confusion and conflict by suggesting a given distribution is endorsed by Kubeflow. I believe that a guide is not a guide to install Kubeflow manifest is not an opinionated bundle of applications optimized for a particular use case or environment, or it is developed under the Kubeflow org. So by definition, it cannot be a distribution. So it kind of leaves us with the option of just delete them, or we call them something different and keep that resource available for people. And I want to keep it available. And obviously, the name deploying manifest. on AWS. I actually meant to write
So
Kubeflow
I
on
get your point,
AWS.
Matthew. Right. So maybe like it could still. So the point is, like there was someone complaining to me coming. Like a lot of these people who were is like it's just these guys are day in day out creating software, and this is just a red herring which has been going on and just distracting people and making them a bit. So the point is, call it deploy Kubeflow on AWS, but just on the first page have a very strong line. Hey, this is supported, not supported. This is just a set of instructions. Like the point I'm saying is deploy manifest here. What are we like sort of achieving? It's just like, I don't want to pick my nose like this. I will turn my hand around this and then cover it. We are just trying to circumvent the issue, right? So in the end, like even if somebody is selling a packaged Kubeflow or somebody is saying come and deploy on AWS making money if somebody's the instructions are there, right? So directly or indirectly, everything is there for commercial reasons, right? There is no altruistic, non-commercial approach there. I mean, whosoever is putting their instructions there, whether you buy this package distribution of Kubeflow or you come and deploy on Google Cloud or Amazon Cloud or IBM Cloud, we're all there, hey, because it's for commercial reasons. So you classify something whether it's commercial or not commercial. If you don't want commercial, go the Knative route, which is it's just kubectl applied. There is no vendor information, and they used to have it. Now I'm not seeing anything like deploy Knative here or there or there, right? So it's kubectl apply. As long as you have a Kubernetes cluster, you are smart enough to know how to deploy, right? Or the other route is then probably it's fine, because even if these are like deploy Kubeflow on this, the underlying thing they are trying to publish is, hey, come and use my cloud or buy my package distribution. But inherent intent is pay some money, right? I mean, nobody is doing it like to make your life easier. It's to make some money, right? That's why those instructions are there. Yeah, so I don't see like the whole debate. This has been going for 4 or 5 months and just going around in circles.
Well, I won't make too many more comments, just one more comment, which is that the reason why this started is because if you look through the Slack and every other issue tracker, almost 100% of the issues are about installing on AWS and installing on other major cloud vendors. That is because we are failing to communicate effectively how to install Kubeflow. This is partially because of this distribution confusion, but it is also because it looks like the officially endorsed method of installing on specific platforms is those distributions called deploying on AWS, which often are not actually even up to date or even correct.
But like, I mean, the way I see it, that's your assumption. The way I see it, the majority of the issues are for AWS because, hey, AWS is the leading, it's the most used cloud vendor. So by virtue of most people trying it out there, you see most of the issues for there. It is nothing else, like assuming that we are failing, they are failing. It's like if anyone is failing, it's probably AWS needs to spruce up the instructions, because majority of the people are trying on AWS because, hey, they probably are getting a cheaper deal there, right? In terms of the compute infra. It's as clear as that. I mean, I'm why are we reading too much into it? Like it probably the order will be AWS followed by Azure, followed by Google, followed by XYZ, right? It probably is the way the cloud wars are, right? That's how you will see the number of issues.
I think you're missing my kind of point here, though. That is, you're not wrong. What you're saying is correct, but I think you might be missing the point, which is that the point is there are distributions of Kubeflow and there are official manifests, if you want to call them that. And we need to help users understand when I have the goal of deploying Kubeflow, that I have some options in the same way that on Kubernetes. So I think comparing it to Knative is not a great example because we're trying to compare it more to Kubernetes. Anyway, like what I'm trying to say there is Kubernetes website does not say to deploy Kubernetes on Google, you use GKE. It says, here's Kubernetes, and then it says, here's a partner. One of the vendors is GKE. And that's what we need to do as well.
So I'm going to ask that I think this is a great conversation, and I think it's really good, but we have a lot of things to talk about. We've gone over this topic quite a bit. I like the idea that you brought up at the very beginning, Matthew, that if there was a process to approve this, then we could take plus ones and minus ones. Quite frankly, I think we would have some minus ones on this still. And we have spent a lot of time. I don't know at this point whether there's some way to modify this or whether we should start again. But we have talked about this particular issue quite a bit. We spent some time on it, and I don't think we have alignment yet.
In my mind, we might. The Google people are really, at the moment, the only approvers that need to approve it, in my mind. And I think if we want to follow our own policies of following our currently agreed things, and if we don't do that, then what are we? We're just kind of a random group of people doing random things. The definition of a distribution is not being currently met under our distributions pages on the website. So I see the two options are we delete the ones that aren't. And sure, if that's less controversial, fine, but I think it will hurt the users.
I think you make a lot of good points. One piece I would say is that a lot of issues come up from on-prem, even more from on-prem probably than any other environment. And so, you know, I get the whole, I think everything, a lot of what has been set up to now is accurate. I'm looking for a path forward on this. I've made a, you know, do we make a vote on this so we can either decide whether this goes through or not? Or do we modify it to a place, or do we just give it to Google and let them decide?
I think we have.
I think we need to make a decision.
I think, I mean, the simplest would have been like, rather than confusing, call out things for what they are. Like, hey, this is, I mean, guides to deploy Kubeflow on AWS, deploy Kubeflow on Google Cloud. That's fine. I mean, why are we? And then this is a package distribution where, hey, if you buy it from vendor XYZ, you know, this is their packaged product. I mean, everyone in the tech industry is smart enough to understand the difference. Like, I don't know, like, you know, are we like kids who cannot understand that, hey, there are instructions to deploy something on cloud versus a packaged product which someone is selling? These are the only two categories. Call them out, and that's what it is. Like, deploy Kubeflow on these particular cloud providers, and they are the ones, you know, who are behind those instructions, or buy a packaged product, or you know, people who are providing, right? And for those, if you want to remove the products, I'm totally fine, right? I mean, it's like you will continue debating like, hey, is that commercial and this is not commercial? Like, the point is, if you're making a case that I want to remove the distributions because they are endorsement, you probably also want to remove the guides because they also look like an endorsement, right?
I'm not saying remove the distributions because they're endorsement. I'm saying, in fact, I think we're agreeing. I actually, based off what you've said, which is that there are two different methods of installing Kubeflow, a package distribution and a guide. This PR, all it does is split them up.
Split them up, but you are changing the name. You're fighting with people. Hey, call this deploy manifest on here. Deploy this. I mean, it's like you're creating, instead of, it is deploy Kubeflow on AWS, is deploy Kubeflow on IBM Cloud. Why are we now circumventing and trying to add a different name? You are adding more confusion versus clarifying. Like, it's a guide to deploy Kubeflow. I mean, that's pretty much what it is. Like, stop.
Well, I mean, but the danger is that, especially for people whose English is not their first language, is that looks like the only option if I put that on there. If I say Kubeflow on AWS, it will be interpreted as the only option.
Why? Like, if the first list is that deploy Kubeflow on AWS, deploy Kubeflow on GCP, deploy Kubeflow on Azure, deploy Kubeflow on IBM Cloud, deploy Kubeflow on OpenShift, if all these 5 things are appearing one after another, why would deploy Kubeflow on AWS will appear as the only option?
Because if they read the words deploy Kubeflow on AWS, that's the guide they're going to follow if they're running AWS.
So yeah, Matthew, on AWS, that's the guide they should follow. Why not?
I don't think it is. I actually don't think that's the best distribution on Amazon right now.
Matthew, I am from AWS. This is Gautam here, and
yeah,
I kind of agree with
Matthew. Assuming, like, point is, let people decide who are people from AWS or IBM Cloud, what they want to call. Like, you are making decisions whether it's best for them or not, right? That's the problem which is happening here.
Okay,
so Matthew, if I may speak, I think I like the idea what Animus is proposing. Let's have a central page where only says that Kubeflow deployment methods, and you can put your like Knative at the top, and you can have this Kubeflow deployment at AWS, at Kubeflow deployment at IBM's, and like so many other companies. And I don't think that creates a confusion. That's pretty solid. Like, if I'm going to AWS, I'll pick the AWS deployment part, and that will take me to the AWS GitHub page. That's fine. That's like now they should manage that, and
That is
you're
exactly
responsible.
what is happening in this PR. I don't know what the confusion is here. Like this,
I think the confusion that Animus is bringing is like you're dictating the fact that the people should rename it to call deployment manifest and all that. Let them, like, if I want to call, X by Z, that's like my problem, AWS problem. If
well, no, it's
GCP wants
actually
to
the
call it,
trademark owner's problem,
yeah.
which in this case is
I,
Google.
I don't think that's the case.
Again, so is James telling, James, is this your problem? So Matthew, you're making every problem someone else's problem, which is not your problem. Is Google telling that you cannot call this deploy Kubeflow on IBM Cloud?
We've already agreed to that, in fact.
Who is
That
agreed?
was
Like, why
everyone,
is
the whole
Google
community.
stopping
This
us?
is one of the things here, naming.
No,
They're
but
encouraged
I didn't
names
agree,
they're
Matthew.
not
So
endorsing.
the point is, that's what I'm hearing from the folks. Like when you say we, I'm part of that community. There are folks who attend from IBM. They are coming and complaining that this is like deliberately created confusion, which was very clear. And even a layman would understand when you say deploy Kubeflow on AWS versus now deploy manifest on AWS. Okay, what the heck does this mean? Now let
We
me
can
read
rename it
through
to
it.
Kubeflow manifest if you want. That's
Yeah,
fine.
call it Kubeflow manifest and don't
That's
remove
fine.
the
And if
word.
that was
Like
the
is
debate,
Google?
then we should just start with that.
Yes,
That's
okay,
such
so
an easy. I'm not making any opinionated things here. I'm not trying to take control. What I'm doing is just trying to clarify that there is a difference between these two pathways. That is all.
That's good. Like, so that definitely is good attempt, right? A package distribution versus deploy. The point I'm saying is like, unless and until, yes. I mean, if Google comes and say, hey, IBM, you cannot use the word Kubeflow when you have this instruction, then I will listen to it, right? At this point, no one else should tell me that don't use the word Kubeflow, use the word manifest. That's what riling up people, that why are we making preemptive decisions here?
Well, actually, I think you're 100% right. I think that it would be more clear if we add, if you see under this install manifest manually page, if we add the word kube, or even use kubeflow / manifests to be more even precise. And then in the case where it's not that's what's happening, then it's probably a distribution and it should be moved up. That's the whole point. Like, so if that's the proposal, that's a really good proposal. I'll make that change. If that will make you accept it, like if that's going to be suitable to you. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, just like, don't, I mean, it was like this. It was like in a sense, like our instructions were deploy Kubeflow on IBM Cloud, right? And now this is being changed to deploy manifest on IBM Cloud. And I was trying to understand the reason why are we removing the word Kubeflow from it?
Well, it's more like just, it was cleaner, but we can make it just Kubeflow / manifest in, quote form like that. And it'll be super clear.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, that's perfect. Because I think.
I mean, not slash, just say Kubeflow manifest, right? Why sure, slash? You're like sort of implying.
It shows that it's the repo, because if it ever is not, because this also, it's a good check to say if it's ever not true, then it's not a manifest guide. It's another thing. It's something else. It can be moved to a distribution.
Yeah, that's fine.
That's what it's to prevent. It's just so that it's actively wrong if it's not correct anymore. That's kind of why I wanted to do it, so that someone will fix it.
No, that's fine. So just add like, okay, deploy Kubeflow manifest XYZ, and that probably is, I mean, other than that, I don't see.
It's not really a controversial change, I don't think. It's just like, I'm not removing any information. The controversial change would be deleting stuff, but I'm not. I'm just moving it.
And the other part is like, but is, I mean, there are so many tail ends to it. Like, do you call, but it's okay. It's fine.
But I think deploying Kubeflow / manifest on X, and I think for IBM, I think someone did mention that you have a fork of the Kubeflow manifest repo. So potentially, it might be a distribution, but I'm not entirely clear, because someone from IBM needs to clarify. But that's the whole point. If we just merge the PR or not.
The reason we have a fork is because we were told at some point that the vendor manifest will be removed from Kubeflow, right? So, I mean, honestly, I don't even care where the manifests are, right? So as long as, like, yeah, let's do better things rather than continue discussing this. Let's get done through this and okay, add Kubeflow and let's now go and create software versus, continue discussing naming and renaming and all that. Yeah.
Okay. I'm happy with that. That's what I'm not trying to take control. I don't want to make that opinion. It's just, I want to make it clear for users who I talk to every day.
No, you're on the right track. I think the only thing is it has lingered on for so long that people are a bit like, hey, let's just get it out of the way. And so, yeah, I think let's just get done. And hopefully, this clarifies some of the things. And the other part of confusion was, the manifest itself, right? That has been a discussion from like 7-8 months. Do they reside in Kubeflow? Do they don't reside in Kubeflow? That probably also needs to be clarified. And that's honestly was one of the reasons, right, why we had our own manifest repo. Okay.
Well, we have a Kubeflow manifest repo now, and this is for the ones managed by the working group. So you won't be able to add things to there that are specific to IBM, but you can very much make a separate repo, which will target these ones and wrap it into a package distribution. And then it becomes a distribution. You know what I mean? Like, that's what definition of a distribution is. So.
Now, the other part is like, I mean, since we are on the topic, like there is the Vertex pipelines, right, which is a distribution of Kubeflow pipelines itself, or right, Watson Studio pipelines, which is a distribution of Kubeflow pipelines only, right? Like, how do you then, do you now need to list everything? Like, those are the kind of things.
No, so we've agreed that they will, so for now, we're just letting anyone add anything as long as it's not clearly malicious. But once the certification program exists, you will have to be certified to be listed under the distributions. Which it already does exist. We just haven't implemented it yet under the proposed certification one, which is here. So if you want to review that, you can. Okay, cool. I think that's probably enough to start discussion on that. Anyone else want to make any final comments?
No, so that's good. Yeah.
I think it will help everyone. That's all I'm trying to do. Cool. I do want to just highlight that anyone with a prover, the notebooks working group has finished working on the docs for 1.4. So if someone could just approve this, and as you can read through the history here and see that it is agreed to. So if someone because it adds redirect, so someone with root approver on website needs to approve it, like Jan or James or someone. So if someone could just go /approve, that will be great. The refactoring the Kubeflow pipeline section, we won't talk about it, but I just want to highlight it to the pipelines working group that it was annoying me so much because it was hard to find things. And we talked about it a few times where there was too many nested links. So all I did is I didn't remove any docs or change any docs. I just unnested all of the docs out of each other. So like it went from this, which is the old structure where, oh, that's the new one, sorry. It went from this, which is the old structure, where things are kind of nested. So some of these are actually groups themselves under the Kubeflow pipelines docs. Now this kind of moves them up again and adds all the required redirects so that this is the final output. So you've kind of got quick start, overview, concept, installation, V1 and 2, samples to reference and whatnot. So if anyone from the pipelines working group could review and see if that's a good idea and you agree with it, that would be great. I think it will help users. Then there's some other stuff, but it's probably not worth going through them all. There's one other one I want to highlight to the pipelines working group, which is that I've cleaned up all of the, there was a connecting pipelines SDK doc that I updated, and I've merged all of the changes that were requested. So if someone could approve that, that would be good. Either Jan or James again. Yes. Cool. Ricto wanted to propose something about user group contributors. Josh, do you want to comment on that?
Yeah, you want to go ahead and click into that link that you have there. Okay, in the retrospective of 1.4, there was requests from working group, particularly the cat tip working group, that they wanted more user interaction. On the other side, from the user groups, we have many users asking us, how can I help the community? How can I contribute? So what I was hoping is, and obviously they could do this in an ad hoc way, but what I was trying to do as documented here is to define a role that would be somewhat recognized by both users and by the working groups of a user group contributor role that would be ephemeral for one release, basically would be identified, that would help us grow the number of contributors, but also get us feedback from users, especially on the way new features are being developed, and potentially help us with the documentation. So this kind of outlines the responsibilities and the prerequisites for people that we would want to be as a user contributor, gives them somewhat of a process about how to sign up and formally get approved. And in the end, I suspect that the people that want to contribute are going to ask for difficult features or things that aren't there. the working groups then will be able to review these submissions, which hopefully will have a PR on it that this person wants to help on, and decide. And really the way this is written is the working group has ultimate decision whether this feature fits into the release, the next release that we're going to deliver or not. So again, the goal is to grow the number of user groups, user contributors. And hopefully if we would do this, every release, maybe we'd get 1 or 2 people contributing to every working group. And if we had 2 or 3 releases a year, potentially we get a good number of users contributing. So that's the concept.
So can you quickly just in one sentence describe what a user group contributor is? I'm still a little bit unclear. Like is it a
really?
I
guess you haven't read it, but it's someone that submits the fact that they want to contribute to a working group during the release 1.5, and they have a PR that they want to help to work on. So that would be everything from helping design it to test it, to document it and release it. I mean, I think it's pretty straightforward, Matthew.
But are they a coder or are they a user?
Well, that'll be up to what they decide and say that they can do. But obviously, the more that they come in and say that they can code, maybe that they're competent enough, and the working group will say yes. If they're not, maybe they can do documentation or testing, right? So it'll be somewhat case by case. I didn't want to get that prescriptive, but I think to your point, having a code contributor may be different than just a regular contributor.
Cool. What do you want from the community here? Do you need like a response here? What's?
I've asked for the working groups to be able to review this and see if they would, first, if they think it would help them. 2, if they think it would be a burden or help them. 2, if they would support having a user group, or a user group contributor, in their process for 1.5, and then look at the process and see if they can support the process, right? If somebody submits and says they want to do it, will they say yes or no?
So
and then welcome them into the community.
I mean, I would love to, I always it's best to be as close to users as possible, right? So I would love to have this. The question is typically when rubber meets the road, isn't it similar to Josh, hey, you go on to the bi-weekly CASER meetings and obviously the project creators are there, but probably 50% of the population is of users, right? I mean, that's how typically the split is on those working group meetings. So it's the instantiation will be similar here. You're formalizing now that, hey, since you 5 are regularly attending the CASER work group meetings, but you are coming in more as a user, let's formalize and create a user working group. That's the intent here.
Yeah, it sets boundaries for both sides. Both the working group knows that they have a user, a role, someone who is going to help contribute through an ephemeral period of time, right? And they can ask questions to and build a relationship. On the other side, the user, if they get their submission approved and it is for a PR, maybe that means that PR actually gets worked on and delivered in a time in the 1.5 timeframe.
Yeah, I would love this. I mean, I don't see a reason not to like it.
Can I make a small proposal, which is that we name it user sponsor or something instead, so that they can and make it very explicitly that they're there to sponsor a single feature or change. That they take on the role of the user, almost a product owner, like you would at a big company have a product owner for a new feature.
Yeah, definitely. I'm not married to the name. I struggled a bit with it, but I just picked a name and said, let's get the content down and then we can figure out what the right name is. But yeah, sure. If people want to put in comments what they think the name should be, we can obviously change that up and put the name that's more appropriate.
Because in fact, this is a very common thing at a lot of companies where they'll assign a person who isn't necessarily even an expert in a field to manage the product release of a feature. And then they have to collate the information from everyone else to say, but they get to make the final decision. So do they have decision-making power here? That's one question I have, Josh. Are you proposing?
The user group,
whoever this person is, do they get to say, yes, this is an acceptable implementation of my proposal? Or
No, it's not written that way. There's no definition that says that that's what it is. It's, you know, we continue on our current process where the working group leads determine, you know, they're the point of contact. They determine what goes into a release or not.
I think my proposal would be make it user feature sponsor.
I think that's fine. I'd like to move on since we don't
Yeah,
have, we can put those comments in, but I appreciate everybody's time for looking at that.
Cool. I think these might be the same. No, they're different issues. Okay, we've got a very quick one here, which is someone wants to.
Yeah, I was asked by Google to document the process of how we create the blog and slide presentation for each Kubeflow release. It is kind of a herding cats type of thing. And, you know, I have a particular way. I would like to thank for this because I think there was some thrashing around as you're starting to learn this process. And what this writing down the process kind of made me see where maybe I was doing extra work or whatever. So probably still extra work in there, but we have a documented process, and hopefully people can see if we want to continue to have for each release, both a blog post and a video presentation, that there is a process to go through and expectations of when you have to start and who needs to be involved and what resources are needed. So that's all. And so we can document that up and get it up. I think we've had some comments. I'd like to finish it up sometime after the Thanksgiving timeframe, but looking for final comments at this point. We've had a lot of comments already from James and others. So if I can close this up, I'd be happy.
I think it definitely should be in this new releases section, which, you know, if we're making this new release section, which includes each release information about what happened and retrospectives, we should totally put this as just a process document at the root of this folder, right?
Makes sense.
I'll just put that. I'll just write that quickly. I think this should be included under the cool. Okay. Now this is the other proposal, which is from Anna, which is to create a releases thing. I think this is something that people just want. Well, I don't think anyone's going to have any controversy here. It's just a matter of who's going to maintain it. Is Anna proposing that she maintains it, or? Cool. Okay, I just want to highlight this one to the community as well. It's a good idea. If someone wants to take up the work to actually do it, that'd be great. If Anna's willing to and she's watching, that'd be amazing. It's just to create information about each release in the community repo. Yep.
To answer Josh's original question, this is Yuan from Google, and we are already this is already on our. I mean the create blog post process was already on our radar, and we'll discuss it and get back to you. I don't think there are major concerns.
Do we have a PR that just has the doc in it, or is it, because I don't think a Google Doc is storable inside of a.
No, I think what we'll do is the request is that we probably put a PR and then put it on the community section. So I think now that we have a place to save it in the release, I think all that makes sense. I was just using a Google Doc because it was easier to get comments and there was some moving around. And
that's fine. No, it's cool. It's a perfect place to do it. Makes sense. Cool. So if you're willing to make that PR, or do you want someone else to do it from your doc?
I probably will need some help, but I'll try to get it moving and we'll see how far we get. How about that?
Awesome. Then last but not least, we've got this quick update from Peritus, the Peritus guys. Hey.
Thanks.
So there's some back and forth, I think. And let me just open that page.
Yeah. So I just wanted to do a quick follow-up. 2 weeks ago, I think the next step in the process was Google was going to discuss internally and come back. They had a bunch of questions. I think I've answered all of them. If I missed out on something, I just want to know, is there anything else that they would need from me?
So I think you're interacting with Thea, who's not in the call, in this issue here. But do you have any read on the situation, people from Google who are talking to Thea? Maybe Jan or James?
Yeah, I'll make sure to ping Thea about this topic again, but I don't have a lot of context with this.
It's pretty, yeah, I don't think it's super controversial. It's just making sure that it complies with the requirements for data privacy and other things. I think that's the main concern, because it sounds like a useful feature to have, scraping the Slack for information. Cool. Other than that, anyone else got, obviously almost out of time. So I just want to remind you, sorry, Jan, to ask you to do things late at night or whenever you get time, I guess. If you could just approve that notebooks one, 3003 on the repo, you can read it and make sure you can read it and confirm that that is what the community wants to do, and you can see it is the case. We just need a /approve on it, which is that one there.
Sure, I'll do that.
Yeah, and then that will update the notebook docs for everyone, and I think people will cry with happiness because they've been out of date since a long time. And then I will make the change required to make IBM happy with the guide section. And I think it's actually a good idea what they're saying anyway. I'm not just doing it to make them happy. I think it's a really good idea to specify Kubeflow in it, in the name. And other than that, if you have time, I would love it if you reviewed the Pipelines SDK update. I went through all your comments and updated my PR based off that.
Cool. I'll take a look this week.
Cool. Obviously not today or tonight or anything. I'm just saying. Yeah.
So
Yeah,
Matthew, while you were refactoring the SDK and the pipelines, did you so one of the things, and I don't know, there is a reference which we add, if you're using Kubeflow pipelines with Tecton, right? Hey, you download the SDK from here versus here, right? Did you encounter any of those in your path, or that didn't come in your path? So you're
we're talking about, so there's two different things I've done. One is just restructuring the component doc section on the sidebar. I didn't change anything about it. I just moved pages around to make it less nested, because there was some cases 3 layers of nesting, which made it ridiculously hard to browse.
Okay.
So I didn't actually change anything. So if anything was already there, it's still there. We're talking in this SDK thing. This is talking about how you connect. There's not a visual image, but this is talking about how you connect to the pipeline's API, like the /REST API endpoint.
Okay.
Not about what the endpoint is. It doesn't matter,
Okay, cool.
It's because it's a bit of confusion about if I'm inside the cluster, how do I connect and authorize myself, and if I'm outside the cluster, and it's just cleaning it up a little bit.
Makes sense.
Cool. Other than that, anyone got anything finally they want to say? Hopefully we haven't talked everyone's ear off. I'm sorry if we have. Anyone got anything?
No, so I believe the next release for Kubeflow is not planned for this year, right?
I haven't seen anything, so.
Okay, cool. No, just good to know. So then come January, that's when we are probably shooting for, I believe.
Some early next year, probably. Josh, do you want to make a comment there about what you want to see, or?
Yeah, realistically, I would think that as we've talked about, it's probably the end of January or early February, but I think we should shoot for the end of January. Moving back in the schedule that we have now, we would have a tight time trying to make that time frame, especially if we give time for people out on the holidays. But I think we need to buckle up. And I guess the request, and it's a good one, is that if you're a working group, one of the things that I thought we did well last time, it was in the retrospective, is that we did have the working groups provide a roadmap update to the community fairly early in the cycle. And I think it helped in 2 ways. I think it helped the working groups understand what their roadmaps were and articulate them better. And it also allowed each of the working groups and the users to start to hear what the working groups were thinking about. Now, the roadmap that we're asking for, that might be a 15-minute update to the community at one of these calls, would not be a commitment for 1.5, but it would just be like, hey, this is what we're looking to do, so we could all get aligned. But there are some major things that have been proposed, like from Joanna talking about being able to support Kubeflow or Kubernetes 122. And that's one thing that's being teed up right now because there's some dependency work that would need to be done. So I think we need to surface those things up and make sure that all the working groups are kind of aligned on some of these potentially bigger overarching issues fairly soon.
Yeah, no, makes sense. Makes sense. I think most of the people will be disappearing for holidays in December, Josh, right? So if you want to, I don't know. I mean, if you want to do a January release, maybe worthwhile targeting last week of November for like laying down like, hey, every working group should strive to support Kubernetes 1.22, like because that's that's a decision, or this version of Istio because that's a decision we're making. So that kind of thing, right? So that it's not entirely new come January. As far as I know, a lot of us like disappear in December because hey, the vacations have piled up and you don't want to lose your vacations, right?
So let me put you on the spot as well as Yuan and James. Last time, both of your working groups, the Kubeflow Pipelines working group and the Serving working group, actually were the first ones to do the roadmap presentations early in the cycle. I thought it was great. Could you guys potentially, put together a 15-minute update for the community that you could give during one of the community meetings during after Thanksgiving? Is that reasonable?
Yeah, I think fairly reasonable. So just like you bug me twice and just like quick update before you end the call, Matthew, like on Kserve, like one big news is that we are presenting taking the project to Linux Foundation AI and data on Thursday morning, presenting on their tag call for voting to be incorporated as incubating project there, right? So that's this Thursday 7 a.m. The call is open to public, like it's but the voting is done by the LFAI and data tag, right, in terms of accepting a project or not. So that's just in general, the side news on the Kserve. But other than that, definitely, Josh, on your point, like the roadmap discussion we can have in the next community call after Thanksgiving. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you.
Awesome. Anyone else want to make any comments? Thank you for sticking with us. Anyone who's still here? Sorry, I'm going to start the recording. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Bye.